Good?
Yep.
Hello and welcome back to Ben and Danielle Reviews. I'm Ben and today I am here not with Danielle or Sharita. I'm back with Jamie and Andrew, and we're doing their top 50 games of all time at numbers 30 through 21. So if you haven't seen the first two videos, please check those out before you do this one, because as with the first couple of videos, I'm sure we're going to reference other games that have been mentioned previously.
And sometimes the game that will be mentioned next.
Yeah, so just watch the top 10 first, and then work your way backwards. Yes, that's definitely, we're giving the best advice for that. Yes. So by the end of this, we'll be able to you'll be able to predict the entirety of Andrew's top 10. Yes. So yes. Not too many shockers are going to happen, even though you've just met him, most likely. And yeah, but so Jamie's been, how long have you been? It's been like a year and a half, a year, something like that?
A year in April.
Yes. So 1 year,
Early
and then you've been started coming around at the same time?
Yeah, around May.
Around May-ish, so yeah, so almost a year. And we played a lot of games during that time. I don't know the exact numbers, but I want to say it's ballpark of around like 400 games or so that we've gotten played in that time. We've also have Eli, who's going to show up in a few minutes here, so I'm probably going to have to let him in at some point. But so if you hear any like doorbell ringing, that's Eli being on time as always. Anyway, so he's not going to talk about his favorite games, but we're going to talk about your favorite games, 30 to 21. So I have your top 50 from a previous year. I don't have any data on you and yours. I know you have a lot of like 2-player games and medium weight Euros, where yours is kind of all over the place. Yes. And so if this is your first one that you watched of their top 50, you and I kind of have opposite tastes when it comes to some games, and then very similar when it comes to other genres. Yeah, it's pretty wild. That's why I wanted to have you on, because I wanted to give people more of a perspective on games than just my good ideas.
They get my correct ideas.
Yes. All right. So we'll start with Jamie this time, if that's all right. Number 30.
Yep. My number 30 is Beer and Bread, another 2-player game.
Okay.
Designed by Scott Alms and Michael Menzel and published by Deep Print Games. It's a 2-player Euro card drafting game where you're going to be playing cards for either their resources, or you can tuck them under a few different things for like an ability. You're also trying to fulfill orders, and how it works is at the end of the game, you're going to score your lowest. You either score your bread or your beer. And so if it's like you scored 20 in bread and 10 in beer, your score is going to be 10 at the end of the game. So you're kind of trying to balance that out. And it's in 2 different phases. There's I think like the fruitful phase or something like that, and then the dry phase. And it's just a fun one, and the good 2-player game.
This is 2-player only, right?
Yep.
This is one I've wanted to try. Have you heard anything about this?
I'm not.
So, when I first heard this game, so it's Scott Alms, which is the Tiny Epic Games, right? I believe so,
yeah.
So, but when I saw this game, I was like, this looks like a Rosenberg game.
It's probably a mini one, yep.
Yeah, and then, but it also has like the 2-way card effects, kind of like Pfister games do.
Yep.
Okay.
The multi-use cards.
Yeah, the
like
multi-use. Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to try this game. When you brought it to the shop, I wanted to play it. We just didn't get around to it because there was 2-player games are harder to get to the table for sure. But yeah, I'm glad you like it. It's also a newer game.
Yep.
Too. So I'm glad it's this high already. All right, Beer and Bread. Am I gonna hate this?
Yeah, you are. So, quick spoiler. So, for this video, my lowest ranked or my lowest complexity game on Board Game Geek is a 1.04.
Yeah.
And my highest complexity game for this video is a 4.44, and we're starting with that 4.44 today. And that is going to be Vladish Models Through the Ages.
Okay.
So, Through the Ages, I guess I'm talking about a new story of civilization,
Sure.
as opposed to a story of civilization. I don't have big contrasting thoughts between the two, other than the production value of the newer version is a lot nicer, and they did some tweaking. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Through the Ages is an epic civilization game for 2 to 4 players, where you're kind of starting from the ancient era. You're going to be led by different leaders, which could be Homer or Winston Churchill or Charlie Chaplin or Genghis Khan to anywhere in between. And you're going to be building up your resource production, your food production. You're going to be building churches and football stadiums and laboratories and all these different things, so that you can just create your own civilization. There's a lot going on in this game. It's a very deep game. So it would be hard to really summarize it, but it is a very solid civilization game. And a few things I would say about it specifically. First of all, it's a bit more abstracted as a civilization game. You're not playing on a map. You're playing on your own little personal resource board, essentially, which is, not everyone's cup of tea, but I think the abstraction works in this case. It is such a deep game. The reason why it's as high on my list as it is that this is a game I've only played my physical copy, and we'll probably talk about this because I think you'll have a question about this. I've only played my physical copy, I think, once. But it's a game where I would happily, if someone said, hey, let's meet up once a week and play Through the Ages, I'd be like, let's do it. Because it's a game where I am confident you could find something new every game. You could always be learning how to get better at this game. And there's just so much variety, too. Each of those leaders, each of those different building types, each of the different technologies you can find are going to drastically change your game each time. And you're not always going to have access to the same ones because there's this row of cards that changes. So you're going to have to play with the cards that are most easily available to you. So there's just so much variety. Your civilization feels very unique at the end of the game. And it's just really good. It's really solid. Why is it at 30 and not 3? Because I've only played my physical copy once, and it's just ridiculously hard to get to the table. So Ben is going to ask, isn't it an online-only game?
Isn't it an online-only game?
So this is what I would say. So there's a wonderful app for Through the Ages. I've kind of fallen away from video games in general. And to me, as a video game, it's a good video game. It's not a great one. Whereas on a table, it's just you feel a lot more immersed in the strategy of the game.
Sure.
It's a super fiddly game. You should know that right now. But all that fiddle kind of gives you time to think, which of these cards do I really want? You can really pore over, see what are my options, what's best for me. And you get to play with other people physically, whereas virtually it's all on your phone. So, even though I've only played my physical copy once, I would like to play it more. And from what I've played online, the gameplay is awesome, incredible. So, also, I haven't said this yet. I meant to say it earlier. Vladish Vadal is one of my favorite designers. This is his second game of mine on the list. More to come. So,
do you have any thoughts on this?
I almost bought the app once. That's about it.
Okay.
I can pull up the app. Look at this. It'll drain all of my phone battery in the 3 seconds. Look at that. It's an app. You probably can't even see it.
But yes, so what kind of civilization do you have if you don't have a football stadium, right?
Not a good one.
Right? Well, so I do appreciate that there's an app for it. I do think it makes it a lot easier to get to the table. I have not played it. My copy is still in shrink. I bought it just because it was on sale. Will I ever play it? Probably not. I appreciate that it exists for the people that enjoy that kind of game where they like to sit down and play basically a video game with cards.
I'd be down to play it.
Yeah, it's just something that's gonna take forever to do so. It's gonna take forever to learn it, and then once you learn it, you're gonna ask a million questions about what does this do? What does this do? What does this do? What can I do this here? What about this?
So I would say the best way to learn the game is the app. I would probably recommend a friend play the app to learn the game before playing the physical copy.
Sure. But I appreciate the fact that there's an app. I also appreciate the fact that you enjoy it. And yeah, so I am gonna put you on the spot just a little bit. So last year you had it at 43.
Yep.
So have you been playing it a bunch more? Or is it just
the desire to play it has gone up.
Okay.
And there's just been a lot of shifting around. So like, as I've been reevaluating this list, I've been asking myself the question, how much do I want to play this game? And Through the Ages is one where like, I want to play it.
Sure.
It's not quite as high as some other games.
Sure.
But it's still relatively high.
So, I do want to touch on it before we get to Jamie. I don't want to. So you and I have talked before about how like our philosophies on gaming, where you like to play kind of like the same game, more the games over and over again to kind of deep dive into it, whereas I'm more of I like to play 500 different games and then be like find out like which game is my favorites and then talk about them on the channel like this, where you are less on the content creation side. You're more of like the deep diving into games like this. So games like this are more of your kind of speed than myself. But
yeah, true.
So yeah, you talked about possibly like once a week kind of thing. Would that make this game be a top 10 game for you, or do you think you'd get burned out with it?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
Okay.
I think it would stay there. It would be a pretty big commitment to play this once a week, because it's like, even with two, it's probably about an hour per player.
Okay.
So it's a lengthy game, but it's a good one.
Okay. Sure. All right. I'm not gonna hate on your pick. I just know that it's not a game for me necessarily, but I appreciate what it does in bringing a sort of civilization themed like video game into card game form. And I know people devote so much of their time to those kind of civilization games in video game form, and same thing, people now they have a board game to do that / card game. Yeah. So cool.
29
All right, 29.
is the Guild of Merchant Explorers,
Okay.
designed by Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert, published by AEG. It's a flip and write game where you get this map, you each have the same map, and there's multiple different maps that you can choose from, and you're going to flip over a card, and then you're going to place these cubes on different terrains, and you're going to try to get groups of them, and you're also trying to spread out and explore the different islands.
Yeah.
You can connect like a 2-pointer with a 3-pointer, and then you time them together to get 6 points, and then you cover one of those up so you can never use it again. You're also trying to get to like these towers up there. If you get all 4 of them, you get a lot of points. If you do all of a region, you're going to put a little like house thing on there, and depending on the round, you'll get that many points. And it's just a quick, fun flip and write game that I like. I bet you don't actually write anything.
Yeah.
I've not heard or played this game.
Yeah. So I know Level Up has copies for sale
Yep,
of this.
that's where I got it.
Okay. So I know I've thought about picking up copies a couple times, especially when it first came out, because I've heard good things from other people, in the hobby about this game, but it just looks like Kingdom Builder,
A little bit, yeah.
and I'm not a fan of Kingdom Builder.
I haven't played it, but don't seem that good.
Yeah, I've played it twice, and it's not for me. So Kingdom Builder plus Roll and Write, which Roll and Writes for me are very hit or miss. Kind of, I'm not as much of a miss as you are with Roll and Writes, but yeah. So they're either like among my favorite, or they're like I absolutely just despise them, and
Mhm.
so I gotta play it before I commit to buying
Oh, yeah.
it. Most games I just buy, but like impulse buy, but these I just can't. All right. The AEG games are usually pretty high for me, especially modern AEG. I know like a lot of the
Mhm.
older AEG are not my thing, but the newer ones, they've been hitting it out of the park, so I'll have to give it a try.
Yep.
All right. My 29 is the Lords of Scotland, which is another nice little card game. So Lords of Scotland, you guessed it, Lords of Scotland. And you are kind of vying for dominance. So what you're trying to do is you're going to be collecting different warriors to your hand, and then playing them to form little armies. There's fancy names for all this. I don't remember what they are. But you're going to be playing them into little armies. And you'll play over a series of rounds, and whoever has the biggest army at the end of each round is going to get some points, which will vary from round to round. There's a couple things that make this game really interesting for me, that make it a 29 on my list. One is that each of these cards has some fancy powers.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things you'll be doing is choosing which kinds of cards, which kinds of powers you want to be activating in a round. There's also a trade-off with the powers. So the cards are numbered from like 1 to 12, and you can only use the power if there's no lower cards in play. So if you want to use those powers, you're also going to need to be playing lower cards, which kind of goes against trying to get the largest group. So that's an interesting choice you get to make. Another interesting choice is that if you have all of one type of card, so each card is a different type, each of those types does a different power. If you have all of one type, it doubles the strength of your army. So another choice you have to make is, am I going to have a small army that's all of the same type? Or am I going to mix it up, give myself a variety of powers, but then I don't get that same type bonus? So there's a lot of really interesting things there. Oh, and also, this is one of those, this is a surprisingly petty game. There's so many ways to mess with your opponents. And I don't know, all of those things, none of those things sound super major, but all of them coming together in a package that is this small and this nice really make a game that I'm happy to take out. So it plays in about, I'd say, 30 to 40 minutes. And you'll get a decent amount of game out of this box. So it's a good one. I like it.
So how many times have you played this? I've only played it the once.
2 or 3 times now.
Okay. So now you and I, we're very different on our opinions of this like small card games like this. This one was one of the ones I liked a little bit more than most. It's not top 100 for me, but it's one that I can appreciate. I do think it's a little petty for my like loving it, but I guess I don't know. I'm more of a petty in real life versus petty in board games.
This game gets so petty, so petty, and like,
which is probably not the real life is not where you take out your pettiness. But I'm not a board game petty person. But I can appreciate like watching someone else be petty, as long as it's not affecting me. So I'm okay watching y'all play this and not maybe playing it myself. But it's got some cool concepts. I thought the special powers that each character has are pretty interesting. But and like the color play on the different cards and playing what cards where, and you playing something to automatically make it so that your opponent's effects no longer work.
So wonderful.
What was it, like higher or lower?
Oh, so you have to play low cards to get to use their effect.
Yeah.
So there's 2 incredibly petty cards. One of them that I even avoid playing this for the sake of how petty it is, just lets you discard your opponent's cards. That's just mean. But sometimes you gotta do it.
Yeah.
The one that is arguably more petty is it trades a card with your opponent, which is so petty because you get that same type bonus for having all of one color. That card isn't the same color as the rest of your opponent's card, so you give them that card like this strength 1 of a color that's different than all their others, and now not only are they down a card, but they're also losing that same type bonus. It's so mean, but
Sure. yeah, this is a very mean game, and yeah, I'm fine with it. If I'm expecting it, but it's not something that like, hey, if you break it out and we'll be like, hey, let's play this. It's like, oh, okay. I have to be emotionally prepared to play this.
It's cool.
So I just know that my day is gonna be ruined, so I have to be prepared. It's like, I don't know, like just like with Brass Birmingham, I have to be prepared for it, but I don't know. It's a lot lighter than Brass Birmingham,
Yeah.
but it weighs on my mind the same for some reason. All right, and so it went up a little bit for you. So it was 41 last time.
Yeah, I think that is a result of having played it a little bit more recently,
Okay.
because I'd gone a very long time without playing it, and
Sure.
like, unlike Through the Ages, my opinion on it had kind of like soured over time, and then I played it and I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. I forgot. So
And you have new victims to ruin their lives.
yes.
More lives have been ruined by this game. All right.
28.
Yeah. All right. 28.
My number 28 is Five Tribes, designed by Bruno Cathala and published by Days of Wonder. It's got a Mancala mechanism where you're going to have all these meeples on these tiles, and you're going to bid on the turn order, and then once you do that, you're going to pick up a group and get it to one of the tiles, and you're going to take those, and they each do a different thing, and then the tile does a different thing, and you're going to be buying these Djinn cards that have special powers, and it's just like a fun puzzle Euro game that I like.
You've not played this, if I remember
I
correctly.
have played this. It's
Okay.
just like I played it.
Okay.
No, I've played Istanbul. I
Okay.
lied.
Istanbul. Okay.
Is Istanbul also a Mancala mechanic?
Not really.
Okay, maybe I have played Five Tribes. I've played one of the two.
Okay. So yeah, we played this recently for the first time.
Mhm.
So it was after I did my top 50. I'm not sure if it will make my top 50. It might be in like my top 51 to 100 range.
Mhm.
I did enjoy this game. I'm glad that it's starting to become more available again, because it was
Mhm.
hard to get for a while.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been looking to try to get the expansions at some point because
Yeah.
I've never played those, but
But-
it doesn't need it.
So that was a game I was trying in this game,
Mm-hmm.
but I was surprised that I won. Just because I thought Jamie's teaching it, Jamie's going to be really good at this game, and you were really good at this game. I just,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason,
You
I
did
don't know.
even
how-
better.
I guess I was even better that day. Yes. So, yeah, Five Tribes. One I'll have to try again at some point. I don't think it's one that I'll want to play like every week, but it's
Mhm.
definitely one that I enjoyed. Five Tribes.
Alright. 28. We're keeping the petty theme strong. The 28 is going to be Trois or Troyes, depending on how you feel like saying this name. So this is a Euro game, and it's such a dry Euro game. You are noblemen in like 12th century Europe trying to gain prestige. So like if that theme doesn't excite you, I don't know what will.
Yes.
But so there's a few things going on in this game. One thing is that it's a worker placement-y type game with dice. And one thing that's interesting about it is basically you're going to roll all your dice up front. It's a solid Euro, so like there's some luck. You roll the dice, but then you don't have to like roll it to do an action. You know what they are in advance. And basically you'll be putting these dice into groups of the same color. There's 3 different colors of dice, and sending them to different actions, and basically depending on how high the total is, that tells you the number of times you'll get to do that action. And that is a really cool mechanic. It gives you a lot of thoughts on how you want to use these dice. You're also going to be kind of like vying for position in these different buildings, which will give you more dice to access on your turn. You'll be building cathedrals. You'll be even doing a little bit of combat with some other dice. But what makes this game so petty and so good is that you can buy your opponent's dice.
And force
and-
sale. Yeah, they
yeah,
can't.
they can't do anything about it. It's just, I'm buying that die from you. Here's some money. Now give it to me.
Yes.
So this game gets very petty really fast. I believe Ben once bought my die so that he could kick me out of a building and take it for his own. There's
Yes.
other petty things you can do. I said you're building a cathedral. That cathedral's petty because you want to have a cube on each of the 3 levels of the cathedral. And I think every time I've played this game, one player has specific, I think you were this player, maybe without knowing it, specifically went out of their way to build in the cathedral as to lock someone out of a level of the cathedral.
I was locked out of levels of a cathedral.
Well, you locked me out of a level of the cathedral, so I don't feel guilty at all. And then there's just so many different ways to mess with opponents. Another thing that's fun, okay, this is a pro and a con. This game is kind of hard to grasp at first because very early on you're not sure what's going to get you points. And even at the end of the game, you won't find out exactly what gets points until the very end because each player is given one of the conditions that will score points. So a lot of that, you're going to kind of try to be reading the different states of the different opponents to kind of try to tell what's going to be valuable at the end of the game. All this to say, it sounds like a super dry Euro game, but it is one of the most interactive, one of the most petty, but still probably not one of the most strategic. It's very strategic. There's just probably more strategic out there, but it's very solid, and that interactive aspect, at least for me, is what makes it a top 30 game for me. So,
Do you have any thoughts on this, Jamie?
I only played it once, and I would need to play it again.
Okay.
It was fine, but
Okay.
I could see it growing with more plays.
Okay. Yeah. So Trois is probably the driest game I've ever played. It's also maybe the most petty, at least of its size.
yeah.
But for some reason, the pettiness didn't bother me as much because I was prepared for it. But also, yeah, it's a lot to grasp in a box. And I know we tried playing it a couple times previously before we actually got to playing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do enjoy that game a lot. Because we played it just recently, it wasn't able to make my top 50. I do think it would hover around that 50 spot for me. Yes, it was a really close game too. Like you won by a single point.
Yep.
And I know I was complaining about it on social media right after. But yes, I was not happy about losing by a single point, and it's such a serious game about stealing your dice. Like because for some reason, it's okay just to go into your house, be like, "Hey, I'm buying your refrigerator," and then you can't be like, "I
need
my
my fridge." So I will say, if this sounds too petty for you, a nice framework shift that might be useful. Their ownership is not a strong thing in this game. It's a little easier for you to use your own things, but really, everything's up for grabs. But it just feels petty when you take someone else's stuff.
And money is a real thing in this game. Like you have to actually manage your money pretty well, because otherwise you can't buy people's fridges if you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you is it 28 this year?
Yes.
So you had it 29 last time. So it's hovering around the same spot. So I'm glad that us playing the game didn't really ruin it.
Yeah. So I'm also glad it stayed in the same spot. It's one that I did really want to play again to see how I felt on it, because I've only played it 3 times now.
Sure.
But I like it a lot.
Yeah. One more thing. So you talked previously about just keeping it around just for the fact of components.
Yeah. So if you're a game designer and you are trying to prototype, this has meeples, it has cubes, it has 6 dice in 4 different colors. It's lovely. It has all that you need. So
yes.
buy it for prototyping. There you go.
And I'm glad that this is one of the Pearl games that they kept around because Asmodee kind of shut down most of the Pearl production of a lot of their games, like the Bloody Inn they stopped making. So I think they kept only like a few of their best-selling games, and I'm glad this one is still getting some love and not just forgotten about. All right.
27
Yes.
is Summoner Wars, designed by Colby Dausch and published by Plaid Hat Games. It's a head-to-head two-player battling type game where you're going to each have a summoner and you're going to be moving on this board, and you're going to have units. You get enemies out by summoning. You're going to have this magic pile that's either by killed enemies, or you're going to discard those at the end of your turn. You can discard your hand into your magic pile. And it's just a fun tactical head-to-head game.
I've played this once.
Okay. I have not played this.
Mm-hmm.
This gives me War Chest vibes.
I've never played War Chest.
Okay. I'm not a War Chest fan.
Mm-hmm.
I know Summoner Wars is talked about a lot on the Dice Tower channel.
Mhm.
I know it's one of like Tom Bassel's favorite games.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's one I would try, but it's never one that's appealed as one I should go out and buy.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that will change if I actually play it.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only played it once, but if I think back on it, it's a game that has the feel of a collectible card game without really being a collectible card game. So if that sounds good to you, then maybe Summoner Wars is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there's also a second edition, which I really want to get and try. I've heard it's better than the first edition.
Do you have like the master set thing?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I got a bunch of like the packs and stuff.
Okay. Cool. And Summoner Wars what number is that?
27.
27. All right. So Andrew's 27.
Right. So I talked a little bit in Trois about that dice mechanic, maybe more than seemed reasonable, but that is because my 27 game uses that exact same mechanic, and that is Steampunk Rally. So Steampunk Rally, unlike Trois, which is a 2 to 4 player game, this is a 2 to 8 player game. It is a drafting game where you are building a crazy machine contraption. You're taking the role of one of those famous scientists, building your contraption and doing a race to the finish line. And your machine is going to have all these different parts, which will use dice in kind of that way that I described in Trois, where you'll send a group of dice to a machine, and then based on the value of those dice put together, that's going to tell you how many times you get to do a thing. In Steampunk Rally, that thing might be moving. It might be, a lot of time it's moving. It might also be healing, so your machine will take a little bit of damage along the way. It might give you new dice. That's actually a thing that happens a lot, is you'll do this, that gives me more dice, so I can chuck those dice and then use those in other parts of my machine. There's also an interesting mechanic in Steampunk Rally where dice that you place on stick around and block up that space, so you also have to find ways to get dice off of your machine. And what I'd say about Steampunk Rally is it takes that really interesting mechanic from Trois and turns it into what, at least for me, is the most successful game of building a machine and watching it go. I have not seen a game that does that as well as Steampunk Rally. And I love the theme. So there's a lot of things I love about it. The reason it's not higher on my list is because, unlike Trois, which is like surprisingly one of the most interactive Euro games out there, Steampunk Rally, there's very little interaction. So it's a drafting game. That's most of the interaction you'll see, to be honest. So that's part of why I can play up with 8 players, because everything's simultaneous. But on the other hand, your machine might be doing something really cool, but no one else at the table knows what's happening with your machine. So if that's a problem for you, you might not like this game. It's a little surprising that's the case in a race game, but if that's not a problem for you, if that idea of building up a cool machine and watching it go sounds great, this is the game for you. It does that incredibly well.
Okay. 108 dice.
Yeah.
It does have 108 dice.
Do you use 108 of those dice?
You use a lot of them. It's probably 108 to deal with the 8 players.
Okay.
But you're going to be probably using at least 10 dice per turn, if not more.
Right.
So
you've played this, Jamie. I have
Yep.
not.
I actually really like that one. I think that might have made my top 50. I forgot about it.
Okay.
you
so,
need to play this.
So what? Yeah. So I need to play this. I'm hesitant, just because of how much Sharita obsesses about this game. Especially like you really made. I don't know what you did, but you what mind tricks you played. But she's obsessed with this game now, and she wants to buy this game, and she just wants every game that you teach her, she just wants to just pick up her own copy.
I would not say that's the case, but I would say that's the case with this one. So I do think it's one where again, my biggest problem by far is the interaction.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that might be a perk. That
Yeah.
there's not a lot of interaction. You just get to see your machine do its thing. And if that is a perk, then this is the game for you. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. But.
Yeah, you're usually prefer a heavy player interaction when it comes to the multiplayer games like
Yeah.
this, and with the
This one
game,
gets a pass.
it gets a pass. Okay, and there's no solo mode.
Yeah. I guess you could do a time trial if you really wanted.
Okay.
It's a pretty solitaire game, so I'm sure you could do a solo mode if you really wanted.
Okay, and so 27.
Yep.
It was 27 last time too.
Okay, so it didn't change?
It didn't change.
Okay. I was looking. I know that I intentionally put that and Twa pretty close.
Okay.
Because they do have that same mechanic, but they just do totally different things with it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Sure. I do enjoy Twa, so I know our time's kind of ticking on getting games played, but
It's a good one.
so player count for this. So do you usually like to play with the full 8 or less?
I've played it 2-player a couple times. I think if everyone knows what they're doing, that 8-player count is fine. I would say you probably don't want more than 2 or 3 new players. I would say probably, if you can avoid it, no more than 2 new players in a given game.
Okay.
Because everything's simultaneous, but since it's simultaneous and your machines are pretty complex, you want to make sure everyone knows what they're doing at the beginning, so you'll probably do those individually the first few rounds if you have new players.
Okay.
So,
And you said that you forgot about this game with your top 50, so it's
I
not
thought I
on
would've
there?
put it on there, yep.
Okay. So it would have been on there, and it would have knocked out something a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel so bad talking about it then, since it's not going to be on Jamie's list. Yeah. I know it's one, so Sharita obsesses about this game, and then you talk a lot about it just because it's one of those games that you kind of keep in your car for the most of the part.
it comes and goes.
Yeah, but yeah, so one of these days I will try this, and we'll probably be a Wednesday game, I'm sure. Just, I don't know. Every time you break it out, I'm always working on something. It's always the busiest days. Gosh. One day. All right. Number 26.
Yep. My number 26 is Welcome to the Moon.
All right.
Designed by Alexis Allard and Benit Turnpin and published by Blue Cocker Games.
Okay.
It's a flip and write game based on Welcome to the Moon. You're going to have 3 different symbols and 3 different numbers, and you're going to use one of those symbols' abilities and write down that number. And what's cool about this one is there's 8 different maps that you can play on. There's also an optional campaign mode that you can play, which I think unlocks more different goals and stuff like that. I haven't fully went through it yet. It's just got a lot of variety. It has a really good solo mode, and I like it.
Have you played any of the Welcome Twos?
I'm not. I kind of I pretty much missed the roll and write bandwagon.
Yeah.
Just wasn't playing a lot of new games at that point.
So I will say that I have not played this one or Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Your Perfect Home is my favorite roll and write, flip and write game. I've thought about buying Welcome to the Moon because all the reviews say that if you like Welcome to the Moon is just 8 times that game. It's just 8 times the content. It just, because it's 8 times the content, it's like 8 times the price. It's not like 8 times, but it's like 3 times the price. It's like a $50 thing, which if I'm gonna spend $50 on a game, I'm gonna get a full game experience for $50. But it is one that I would definitely try and play. But yeah, I don't know, for some reason I just haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one has replaced Welcome to for you, do you think?
Well, when I had played it first, I had never played Welcome to.
Okay.
I had played I've only played that recently with you.
Oh, okay.
I like both. I'd get the original.
Okay.
I don't think it would replace it. I'd probably keep them and just have it like as another map to use.
Okay. Yeah, so. Okay, awesome. Welcome to the moon. All right. Number 26.
26, yes. Okay. So last time, I talked a little bit about how there's some pandemic lookalikes in my list. And last time I talked about a specific pandemic, which has some dice-based combat. And yeah, it's just a different feel because it has that combat element. There's another pandemic with dice-based combat. That is Defenders of the Realm, which has this nice big box with the inexplicable use of Comic Sans. Who knows why they made that choice?
Comic Sans, that's the...
So, this game, it's like Pandemic. You are taking different fantasy trope roles like clerics or rogues or wizards. And you're going around fighting 4 different types of monster. You might be fighting, I think it's demons, you're fighting undead, and orcs, and dragonkin. I think those are the 4 types that you're fighting. And there's also 4 different bosses, one for each of those types. And you'll be going around trying to vanquish these foes. You will be, unlike in Pandemic and a lot of those where you're trying to collect a set of cards of the same color and then just play them to, you know, cure a disease or whatever. In this, you're collecting cards because when you go to fight those bosses, those cards are going to give you dice that you can use in combat against that boss. So what I'd say about this game, by all accounts, it's like not the tightest design. It definitely has some sloppy edges. It has some questionable graphic design choices, like the use of Comic Sans. And there's just a lot that really shouldn't work. But it's ambitious enough that somehow it does. It helps that I already like Pandemic. But this is just a nice different version of that. It's a much longer player count, or a much longer time. It's 90 to 120 minutes. So you get a little bit more of a full game feel of it. You get that kind of fantasy and adventuring vibe from it. And you get to roll some dice to fight some monsters in a cooperative game. That's kind of like Pandemic. So, I don't know. It shouldn't work, but it does.
Okay.
And yeah, it makes, what are we, 26?
Yeah.
Makes 26.
Do you know what number it was last time?
No idea.
26.
Wow.
So you had 27, 27, 26, 26. And you didn't look at your old list, right? When you made this?
I was kind of just swapping stuff around.
Okay.
So, what I'm guessing is that a lot of well, I don't know. I'm not going to promise that. I'm guessing a lot of things will stay where they are.
Okay,
for
sure.
Remainder.
All right. So, have you heard anything about this one?
I've heard about it. I've never played it.
Okay. This is not necessarily one that I would be like, hey, I want to play this. I feel like if I want to play this, I'll just play D&D instead.
I would say this is for like, you're not sure if you want to play D&D or you want to play Pandemic, so you just meet in the middle.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I can respect that.
Yeah.
All right. All right. 26, huh? Cool. Number 25?
25 is another 2-player game. It's called Botanic.
Oh.
Designed by Frank Crichton and Gregor Largi and Sebastian Pachan, published by Space Cowboy Games. It's a tile laying game where you're going to be there's going to be 3 tiles out there, and you're going to place it either in the middle or on the on your side of the board. And the only way you're going to get that tile is if you don't match the color or shape of that tile. So you could end up releasing one of yours, but also releasing one of your opponents. And once you get it, you're going to be trying to match the pipes by like colors and stuff like that. And it's just, again, puzzly, and I like it.
Have you played Botnik?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I've only played this the one time.
Mm-hmm.
My friend B bought it,
Mm-hmm.
and so her and I played that. She's colorblind,
Mm-hmm.
so I had to kind of tell her like what colors are what,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was. It's not exactly colorblind friendly, which is a problem I had with it.
Yeah, that's not good.
But also, the gameplay to me wasn't as interesting as it maybe could have been.
Mhm.
So there was a couple aspects of push and pull with the game that I
Mhm.
enjoyed, but I just think that it just didn't tick the right boxes for me
Mhm.
personally. So it's not a game for me. It's not one that I would put in my top 100 by any means. It was just okay. It just wasn't enough for me, I
Yep.
guess.
Mhm.
Right.
All right, 25.
Yes.
My 25 is Race for the Galaxy. So Race for the Galaxy is it's a card game. It's an engine building card game. It is like the engine building card game.
Sure.
Where you are going to be exploring. You're going to be getting new cards to hand. You're going to be adding planets to your tableau. You're going to be adding developments to your tableau. And as you add these things, they're going to activate. So one thing about this game is each turn you're going to choose one phase of the game you want to happen. That was kind of invented by like Puerto Rico, is really the game that pioneered that. And then Race for the Galaxy is a card game version of Puerto Rico, essentially. So you're going to choose one of those phases to happen. And then as you're adding cards to your tableau, some of those are going to activate every single time you do that phase. So as you build up your tableau, you're going to be doing more and more until this game really builds up into like this does this, and like your actions become super expansive. You'll be producing and reaping in victory points. And it's just a really solid engine builder. What I think does it for me, there's three things I really like about it. First of all, I know you said you kind of hate the art in this game.
I do.
The art's okay, and that's good enough for me because Puerto Rico wasn't a really attractive game. This kicked
Not
Puerto
trying
Rico
to
out of
be.
this kicked Puerto Rico out of my collection. So I like the theme and the art a little bit better than Puerto Rico.
Okay.
This game plays lightning fast. So once you know what you're doing, you can probably knock out a game in about 20 minutes of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I feel like I was going to list the third thing, so let's pretend I did. Another thing about this game, I mentioned Marvel Champions has that thing where you pay with cards from your hand. I think Race for the Galaxy is probably one of the first games to really use that idea.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a nice card game. It plays really fast, but that engine building and the thought that goes into how you're going to build your engine is just immense for the size of the game and the time it takes. Like, you get a lot of bang for your buck with this game. So I like it.
Sure. So you played this with him recently.
Yep, once. And it wasn't my favorite, but it's one I think to know if I like it or not, I'd have to play it like 2 or 3 times just to get all the symbols down and all that.
It's notorious for its iconography.
Yes.
I think I've never had a huge problem with the iconography, which kind of blinds me to that issue when teaching it sometimes. I'm sorry. So yeah, but it is notorious for that. Like, there's so many symbols that you just need to kind of internalize what they all mean to really get that 20-minute playtime down.
So I like that whole action point, the action selection system, and where you only activate the actions that are chosen by the players. And so Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition did that. Puerto Rico, which I want to play Puerto Rico at some point. Yes. So yeah, seen games of this being played by people that know what they're doing, and they get them done like 8-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then your game took what, like half hour or something.
Maybe.
Something like
Maybe
that.
with the teach.
Yep,
Yeah.
with the peach.
But yeah, so
It's a quick one.
yeah,
Yep.
But
I've played it like only a couple times. I guess I just prefer this mechanic in other games, but I appreciate what it does, and what it's done for the hobby. And so yeah, have you played Roll for the Galaxy at all?
I have not played that, and I've not played Ares Expedition, so I haven't played
Sure.
San Juan either. So
Sure.
like, there's so many. Have you played this?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
But I like this one.
Yes,
So.
that's okay. And so 25. You had it at 25 last time.
Yep.
So 3 in a row that are still at the same exact
Yep.
spot.
I don't think. I think that what probably happened is a couple dropped.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple new ones, so I
Sure.
think a lot of them are going to be the same.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. 24.
24.
Is Wingspan, designed by Elizabeth Hargrave and published by Stonemaier Games. It's a card game about birds where you're going to be doing this engine building, where you're going to be picking your cube and either getting resources, laying eggs, or drawing cards. And the cards have all these different abilities. Some will activate when you go through that row, and some will be like you get that power now and then that's it. And then there's in between turn ones, and there's these goals that you're competing for as well, and it's just a fun engine building game. And then I couldn't decide between Wingspan versus Wormspan.
Okay.
I'm still deciding on that,
Sure.
but they're both really fun. And
So are they kind of just grouped together at this point? Okay, cool.
I might be leaning towards Wormspan now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sure. So I know you like Wingspan. It's just not. I doubt it's in your top 50.
It's not. So I'll say something a little wild. I was thinking of saying this but didn't, so say it now. Considerations about like what's best for what situation aside, for me personally, Race for the Galaxy does that kind of game. That's what I want from that kind of game.
Okay.
That said, Wingspan is so much more accessible. Like,
Very, yep.
you can. It's a lot of people's first games in the hobby, I think.
Yeah, it is,
It's
yeah.
been super successful. So,
Yep.
Yes.
like, you cannot do the same thing with Race for the Galaxy that you can do with Wingspan
Yeah.
by any stretch of the
No.
imagination.
You're-
But at least for what I'd like to play, they kind of scratch the same itch, and I like Race for the Galaxy
Yeah.
better.
But you're not knocking out a game of Wingspan in 10 minutes at 2 players.
No.
But so I can appreciate that. I just respect so much of what Wingspan has done for the hobby, and I don't want to talk too much about it just because I know Sharita and I are going to talk more about it when we do our final video. But yeah, so Wingspan, Wormspan. I don't know if it if you can justify having 2 separate spots for the games. So we played a whole bunch of Wormspan
Oh, yeah.
last month. Like the last 2 months, we just spent like playing Wormspan like so much, and I'm not burned out on it.
No, it's fun.
And I'm glad about that because I was so worried about buying. Because when I bought Wormspan, I bought it because I wanted to try it, demo it, and then I give it to Sharita, which I did. And yeah, we got our plays of it. I don't know if I'll get my own copy. I know we have copies at the shop now for sale and everything, but yeah, I like each game separately. But in terms of just like Wingspan, since we're talking about Wingspan, I do like the concept of how you, bare bones, you have 4 things you can do on your turn. You can play a bird, gain food, gain eggs, or gain resources. All of them are important things that you need to do in the game. Yeah, it's a good choice. Little surprised it's not a little bit higher on your list, but I think 24 is a good spot for it. And so, yeah, it's definitely a little bit higher for me and a little bit higher for Sharita. But and then of course we have our people in our group like Eli and Camila who are very much on the side of Wormspan is
Yep.
way better of a game to the point where it's completely replaced Wingspan. And do you have any comments on that? Ed?
Like, both of them are good games for me. I've only played Wormspan once. I've only played Wingspan maybe 4 times, maybe
Okay.
4 or 5 times.
Sure.
Which I mean is not nothing, but it's not a bunch. So,
Sure.
as I said, there's neither of them is my favorite. There's other games that do the same thing but better for me. So, yeah. I don't have super strong opinions
Sure.
on Wingspan versus Wormspan.
Okay. Cool. All right. Good pick, Jamie.
Thank you.
All right. And next pick for Andrew.
Okay, I am
see
not
you beat
sure.
that.
I'm not sure either of you have played this.
Oh no.
Maybe. It's not a totally uncommon one. So the next game on my list is the Resistance Avalon. I have not
okay.
played this in a while.
Okay.
But Resistance Avalon is one of the kind of classics of social deduction. So in this game, you're going to have a lot of loyal Knights of the Round Table, and then a couple less loyal Knights of the Round Table. And at the beginning of the game, you'll find out which of those you are. Are you a loyal knight, or are you one of those traitors? And what's going to happen is the players need to go on, I believe it's 5 quests, something along those lines. But each turn, you need to, someone's going to choose a group of people to go on that quest. And basically, those people, you're going to agree on if that quest goes or not. If not, then you have to pick a different group, all that fun stuff. But then those people have to put either a success or a fail card into that quest. And as long as there's even just one fail card, the quest fails. And if too many quests fail, the loyal knights lose. So basically, the game is going to be all about trying to figure out who are those rascally traitors who keep ruining our quests. But then those rascally traitors have to be a little bit careful, because if they kind of play their hand too heavily, and if they can, other people can tell, oh, you're definitely the traitors, they're just not going to invite them on the quests anymore. So they won't have that opportunity to fail those quests. There's a couple, so this is based on a game called Just the Resistance. One thing that makes Avalon different is that there's a lot of special roles. Probably the most important is there's a Merlin character, and Merlin knows who the traitors are. So Merlin can try to lead the discussion towards, maybe those people shouldn't go on the quest. But on the flip side, the traitors can win if they can guess who Merlin is. So Merlin also can't play his hand too heavily and be like, yeah, it's totally those two, just don't invite them, because then the traitors will be like, so you're Merlin, good to know. So I'm going to be talking about another social deduction game a little bit later,
Sure.
which I prefer to Avalon, but Avalon does do a lot of things well. Okay, just for the sake of comparison. The other one,
yeah.
which may or may not be higher, is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Spoilers. What I would say Avalon does that Werewolf doesn't, and where this might be a game for you as opposed to One Night, is Avalon is a lot less tense on the traitors. Werewolf, you have to be on your game, because if you slip up even a little bit, people will pounce on your lie, and tough luck. It's a lot easier to skate by as the traitor in Avalon. There's just a lot less high pressure on you. So if you want that social deduction with a little less pressure to constantly be lying, Avalon might be more your speed. One plug I have for Avalon is in college, I lent my copy to some friends, and they used my copy and wore it down so much they bought me a new copy. So they quite liked the game, and I do like the game. It's just, there's another one that might come up later that I like a little more.
Sure.
Also, Avalon's a lot longer. It's about 45 minutes versus One Night's 10-15.
Okay. So I have the Resistance. I don't have Avalon. So has Avalon just completely replaced the base Resistance for you?
I haven't played Base Resistance, but I know that I don't think many people play base resistance. I think most people just play Avalon
Okay.
because of that Merlin mechanic. And there's some other special roles in there too. It's just Merlin's the big one that you
Yeah.
always use.
So, what would be a good player count, do you think, for this? If-
6 to 10.
6 to 10, okay.
Yeah.
Which is doable for Wednesday.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and 5 is okay. I'll say this. So Secret Hitler exists.
Mhm.
If you've played Secret Hitler, you've essentially played Avalon. Secret Hitler is very heavily influenced by Avalon,
Okay.
or at least the Resistance in general. So
Okay.
I only recently played Secret Hitler. I like Avalon a little more. So
Okay. So, we'll talk more about deduction games later. But has your experience with deduction games just only been with our group?
Yep,
Okay.
because I primarily play 2 players at home and stuff. So.
Okay. Right. And so I've played a few.
Mhm.
I've not played any like the big ones like Blood on the Clock Tower or
Mhm.
like the big Ultimate Werewolf, like Mafia sort of thing.
Mhm.
But these are kind of more of my speed just because I can play them in an hour
Mhm.
versus 3-hour thing. But it's something I would play more of if we had a big enough group. Which if we get to the point of having those more consistently, then yeah, I would love to play more of those style games.
Mhm.
All right.
23.
23.
Another engine building game. It's Gizmos.
All right.
Designed by Phil Walker Harding and published by Kaman or
Sure.
Simon.
Yep.
You're going to have this contraption and pour all the marbles in, and then you're going to take one of the marbles and you can use the marbles that you have in your little circle thing to buy the different cards in the market. And there's going to be the engine building part, because on those cards you can they'll give you like more picks or random draws from the container thing, and you can get these really crazy combos of doing this to do that, and it's just fun to kind of see what engine you're going to build that time. And yeah.
Have you played this?
I have not. I really want to.
Yeah, I feel like once I play this, 'cause, it will be my favorite Phil Walker Harding game. I was expecting this to push your top 10,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew it would be on your list. I just didn't think it would be this like low on your list. I thought
Mhm.
it would be a little bit higher, but that's still really good though.
Yeah.
Yes. As many times as like every time you like bring games to the shop, this is always like one of the games that you bring,
Mhm.
and yet Andrew and I have never played
Nope.
it.
Just never happens.
What is up with that?
Yep.
Is okay. So I have my own copy I can always bring to, but
Yep.
it's just
Gotta get played sometime.
I have so many games I need to get played or get rid of them. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
23.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mentioned that there's a very large complexity gap on this video. We started with a 4.44. We are now down to one of the two 1.04 complexities on this list, and that is Ice Cool.
Yeah.
So Ice Cool is a game about flicking penguins, and you flick penguins through doors to get fish to win the game. There's 3 different ways you can play Ice Cool. If you just get the base box, you can play Ice Cool, where if you get a fish, you get a card. Cards are worth 1 to 3 points. And there's one player chasing the characters around the board. So 3 players are trying to get their fish to get points, whereas 1 player is trying to chase down the other players to get points. And that's kind of the original Ice Cool. That I would not put at my number 23. You can also buy Ice Cool 2, which is pretty much that exact same game, but I think you can do trick shots and stuff. I say that because I've never actually played Ice Cool 2 just by itself, because there's a third way you can play Ice Cool, which is you can put them together, and then you get this big ice arena, which takes up a decent size of this table if you put it all together. And it's now a team race game where each team has 2 penguins on it, and you are going through trying to race to get your team's fish first, and then race to the final box so that you can win the game. And that team game like, there's a little bit of rules you need to teach for base high school. That team game, I've essentially just told you how to play it. It's a pain to set up. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. But once you've set it up, it's really easy to just get people playing and have a good time. Those penguins are so much harder to flick than you would ever imagine. And often you'll be like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can make it through that door, and then somehow you miss the door completely. But for every 5 times that happens, you're like, there's no way I could possibly make this shot. It's just not going to happen. And then not only do you make that shot, but you make a 10 times better shot than you intended to. So there's just these really big swings of fortune, and it's just a really fun game. Last time we played it, there was someone who came in the shop just to, was here for something else, and we were, hey, we need a player. Come play Ice Cool. And it took about 30 seconds to tell him how to play the game. He played it. He was on my team. We almost won. We didn't quite win. I think Ben stole the win from us. Thanks, Ben. Were you guys on a team? Right.
Yes.
Well, thanks, both of you. But yeah, so it's a lot of light, harmless fun. It's a dexterity game, if you can't tell that from all I've been saying. It is my favorite dexterity game, and that's about it. So
So this is a game where it's never really been in my top 50, but every time I play it, it's like, why isn't this in my top 50? Because all of our experiences with this game have always been super fun, and I don't know, it's never on the top of my list of dexterity games, but really it is.
That's one I like too. It's fun.
Yeah. All right.
My number 22 is a dexterity game as well, and it's Crokinole.
Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
It's one that I first played here, and I really like it. It's one where you're going to be flicking a disc, and you can score 5, 10, 15, or 20 points if you make it in the center. If an opponent has one of their discs on the board, you have to try to flick that disc before you can have your disc be active, or whatever it's called. And I think it's first to 100 points. And it's just a fun dexterity game. I like those kind of games. I've been recently getting into pool a lot, and it's just a fun one.
So, was your first experience with Crokinole at the shop?
Yep.
Okay. And your first experience with Crokinole was at the shop too? Yes. So Crokinole was kind of non-existent in this area until I kind of brought it here, which it's such a fun game.
It is.
And it just, when you're buying a Crokinole board, you want to get a nice quality one though. There's just no point in playing Crokinole on a really bad quality board, but it's such a good game.
It is.
I don't think it made my top 50. I think it fell out of my top 50 just because it was we played it every week for a while. And then I don't know if Sharita had it in her top 50 or not, but it's definitely a good one. I'm glad it's as high as it is on your list. That's great.
I've enjoyed the plays I've made. I haven't rated it. I haven't ranked it among my others. I don't know if it would make my top 50, but I've enjoyed it a lot. So.
Yes. It's a very easy to get into game.
Yeah,
It's
very.
one I've had the most success with of any game teaching to people, and it's one you can definitely play with non-gamers.
Yep.
It's just getting into it. It's not a very affordable game to get into.
Pretty expensive, yeah.
But it's affordable if you're just playing with someone else's copy. But if you're buying all the stuff yourself, it's not. Yeah. All right, number 22 for Andrew.
Yep.
I need to make a quick peek before I say something that's a lie.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
All right.
So we have talked about on the previous video, we talked about Pandemic Fall of Rome, which is Pandemic with dice. Earlier today, we talked about Defenders of the Realm, which is Pandemic with dice. And now we're going to talk about Pandemic the Cure, which is Pandemic with dice. But this is the Pandemic dice game. It's the game that was designed with the sole intent of taking Pandemic and turning it into a dice game. Unlike in those where you're kind of rolling for results, this is one where you're rolling, and the dice that you roll will give you choices of actions. So as far as the theme, this is closer to the Pandemic theme than anything I've talked about so far. It's the exact same theme. You are scientists. You're working together to save the world from disease. And you're going to save the world by curing these 4 diseases before disease runs rampant everywhere. Except everything's done with dice now. And the reason why I needed to do a quick check to make sure I wasn't lying is this is the highest, for me at least, the highest Pandemic lookalike that I have. Because it's like Pandemic, but you get a lot of the gameplay out of it with a decently shorter time and a little bit less complexity. It's brutal. As I think we mentioned on the previous video, I think it was the previous video, where we got wrecked by Pandemic the Cure when we played it.
Yes.
So like you definitely need to go into it with a little bit of strategy in mind. Specifically, as you try to collect these cures, the dice that you can use to get actions get kind of sucked up by dice that you need to use to cure. So if you focus too much on curing, you won't be able to like save the world.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting decisions in this one. It plays quick-ish, about 30 minutes as opposed to Pandemic's 45 to an hour.
Sure.
And it's brutal. And but yeah, it's a pretty solid dice version of Pandemic. And as I said, probably my favorite of the Pandemic but not quite.
Okay.
So.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
I didn't like that one.
Okay. So I personally, it's one I've always wanted to try, and we tried it, and the dice randomness to it was interesting. I was fine with it just because I came in with the attitude of like, hey, this is going to be Pandemic, except with a little bit more randomness with the dice. But I didn't feel like there was a single competitive minute in the game that we played. Like we just got just destroyed from the beginning, and it was just quickly over, and we were just delaying the inevitable. Whereas with Pandemic, you at least have a feeling of, hey, like we could actually do this at some point. Whereas with the game that you and I and Jamie played, we didn't have a shot.
Yeah. I have won before. It is possible.
Yeah.
I promise.
Okay.
There's a hefty luck component.
Sure.
It's a dice game, so that kind of comes with the territory. Yeah, so I'd say if getting wrecked by the dice is not your cup of tea, then Pandemic the Cure probably won't be your cup of tea. But if you're in for a cooperative game that's decently quick,
Sure.
not the hardest to pick up, then it does the job pretty well.
All right.
21 is Sobek 2 players. Designed by
Okay.
Bruno Cathala and Sebastian Pauchan, published by Pandasaurus Games and Ketchup Games. You're going to set up all these tiles on this grid, and you have this little Ankh thing that's going to dictate where you can move either horizontally or vertically, and depending on which tile you take is going to be where the Ankh moves and where it gets oriented next. You're trying to collect sets of like different things like fish and cows and stuff like that. Once you get 3 or more, I think it is, you can turn them in for points. And then there's also these little green things that have different powers on. Once you turn in one of a set, you can get one of them, and they do different things like give you an extra turn and all that. And it's a fun, puzzly 2-player game that's I like.
Yeah, I know pretty much nothing about this game. So this is probably the first one that, from your list that I have not only not played, but also like know very little about it. And Doesn't sound like you know much about it either.
I do not.
I know I've seen it, but I just don't know anything about it.
Mhm.
It's never been one that's been on my radar. So I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yep.
What made you get this game?
It was 2-player, and a few reviewers I watched had really liked it, like
Okay.
Z Garcia and stuff like that,
Okay.
and the Game Boy Geek, and
Gotcha.
it just looked fun, and I got it, and it
Sweet.
was really fun.
All right. Awesome. All right.
All right.
21.
21 is also a complexity of 1.04.
Okay.
And I have one other game on this list that almost qualifies as a party. Yeah, I have a few. So I can't say this is my favorite party game, but it's a pretty good party game, and that's Just One. So Just One is a game where it's a cooperative game. If you can't tell, I like cooperative games. But the goal is each player is going to be trying to guess just one word. Well, just one player, is going to try to guess just one word. And everyone else is going to try to help them guess that word by writing just one word.
Yep.
And then, so they're trying to give words that will help the player guess the word. But if more than one player writes the same word, then those clues go away and the guessing player doesn't get to see them. And basically, each turn you're trying to come up with a word that will help the player guess it. So like, let's say it's taco. I think that's one that I saw recently. You might write burrito. And then, like, that's a pretty good clue. They'll think of taco if they see burrito. And then your friend is also thinking, I'll write burrito, because if I write burrito, they'll think taco. Well, now the person trying to guess taco won't get to see either of those. So maybe you think, okay, maybe not burrito. Maybe I'll do, how about enchilada or something like that? A little bit more obscure, but try to get them on the right track.
Mhm.
But if you're too obscure, like, taco, that is Mexican, but Mexico is bordering Guatemala. So maybe I'll write Guatemala. Then that's not going to help the player at all.
Yes.
So you have to, it's just nice and fun. I can probably say this. I have a satchel that I bring around.
Yep.
And it has a lot of games that fit just as many different circumstances as I can fit within a single backpack.
Yep.
This is the one that I bring out for I'm with a bunch of non-gamers and we just want to have a good time. It plays from 3 to 7. Probably wouldn't play it with 3, but I would say if you have access to more whiteboards than 7, you can certainly go over 7 with this game, which I've done a few times. It's really easy to pick up. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I'd recommend it. So.
I like that one. It's a fun one. I don't have too much experience with like party games and stuff, but coming here, I've been able to play more of them, and that's one I like.
Awesome. Yeah, so this one is one that's just so easy to get people to play. Like you've mentioned, like non-gamers, it's definitely like my go-to for a bunch of non-gamers.
Yep.
I will say this game is more of an activity than a game in most scenarios, and so it kind of fallen a bit for me. I know I used to trash on this game a lot, especially when Alex and I were making videos together. So this used to be one of her favorite games because she used to play it with her family, and I was like, "This isn't a good game." And then it's not a good game.
It is a good game.
Whatever. Tell them about it. If I actually played it myself, and I was like, "Oh, it's actually not bad at all," and so it's actually pretty solid. And I respect what it does in the hobby. It's not a top 50 game, probably not even a top 100 for me, but it is one that I keep because of other people.
Yep.
And so, yeah, Just One. Good pick.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yep.
yeah, so that is your numbers 30 through 21. Were there any surprises from this list? Anything that catches your eye as one's like, hey, why haven't I played this yet?
I think probably the one, not that it was a surprise, but Crokinole was like, I see that one.
Yeah.
And Gizmos made me go like, let's play it sometime.
Yep.
Yes.
Let's do it.
I'm surprised that Crokinole was so high
Mhm.
for you, but I'm happy about that.
Mhm.
I will definitely take all the credit for that.
Yep.
Yes. I think that's everything
Yep.
for this one. That. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned in for the next one. Have a good one. Bye.